All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating spiritual revelation from January 17th, 2018. Specifically, we're going to zero in on Chapter 3, which focuses on the ancient god Ophearis. Whether you're a total mythology buff or you're just genuinely intrigued by how ancient spiritual ideas still echo today, this specific revelation offers a highly structured, completely unique perspective on life, death, and the soul. So according to this source text by Ryuho Okawa, we're looking at teachings attributed to Ophearis, a figure strongly equated with the ancient Egyptian god Osiris. We are definitely exploring some deeply esoteric metaphysical concepts here. Now, just to be clear, our goal in this explainer isn't to take a stance on these theological claims. Rather, we want to logically break down the internal arguments of this revelation so we can really understand the profound ideas it presents. Here's the roadmap for how we're going to break this all down. First, the ancient Ophearis revelation. Second, defining the resurrection faith. Third, kings guiding from heaven. Fourth, overcoming physical limitations. And finally, the omnipotent soul. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the ancient Ophearis revelation, Ophearis and Osiris. The text actually asserts that Ophearis is the exact same entity as the famous Egyptian god Osiris. You know, the classic myth, he's tragically betrayed and brutally assassinated by his brother Seth, only to be resurrected by his wife Isis. It's a legendary story. But what's fascinating is that this 2018 revelation takes that historical myth and frames it as a foundational, literal event that literally shaped human consciousness. Moving right along to Section 2, defining the resurrection faith and why it's a completely misunderstood concept. The author clarifies a massive misconception right out of the gate. When most of us hear the word resurrection, we instantly picture a physical body waking back up, like a mummy walking out of a tomb, right? But the text states that in Ophearis' era, the resurrection faith was so much deeper than that. It was the profound realization that the soul actively continues to exist in the spirit world after physical death. It wasn't about the physical body at all, it was about the unbroken continuity of the spirit. The revelation uses this incredible phrase, calling it a truth piercing through this world and the next. It wasn't just some comforting story they told themselves, it was a central philosophical pillar. According to the text, understanding that the physical world and the spiritual realm are intimately connected gave people a completely different framework for understanding their own lives and the rulers who govern them. That brings us to Section 3, Kings Guiding from Heaven. The king becomes a god. According to the source, ancient people embraced a very specific political and spiritual belief. When a great king died, his reign absolutely did not end. He didn't just vanish into the afterlife. Instead, he became a god whose primary job was to actively guide the earthly world from heaven. Essentially, the leadership merely shifted from a physical throne to a spiritual one. Now, what made Ophearis so unique, the text notes, is that he actually balanced these two states while he was still alive. While he was actively governing his citizens in the physical world, he simultaneously maintained complete consciousness of the spiritual realm. He literally lived in both worlds at once, acting as this ultimate bridge for his people. Let's dive into Section 4, overcoming physical limitations and the tragic death. So you've got to wonder, if Ophearis was this incredibly enlightened, dual-conscious ruler, how on earth does getting brutally murdered by a rival brother prove his supreme strength? On the surface, that looks like the ultimate defeat. And this is where the text makes a brilliant counterintuitive point. The physical body, no matter how powerful the king, is inherently weak. It has a finite life, it gets tired, and it is entirely vulnerable to things like betrayal and assassination. But by experiencing this destruction and then actively returning to guide his people from the spirit world, Ophearis proved that the liberated soul has infinite potential. The assassination wasn't a defeat at all. It was actually the necessary catalyst to demonstrate that the true self transcends all physical limits. Which leads us right into our final area, Section 5, the omnipotent soul, power beyond the flesh. We aren't talking about a subtle power upgrade here. The revelation asserts that a soul freed from the flesh packs 10 to 100 times the terrifying, awe-inspiring power of a mere physical body. Basically, the flesh is portrayed as a massive limiter, and death is simply the mechanism that removes those constraints to reveal the soul's true magnitude. So here's the absolute core of the argument. Ophearis didn't just survive an assassination. He used it to repeatedly manifest his spiritual powers on earth afterward. And by doing so, he firmly established what the text calls the omniscient and omnipotent faith. He proved to his era that true power resides totally outside the physical world, and that physical death actually liberates our true omnipotence. According to the source, this profound paradigm shift laid down the spiritual foundation for the past 10,000 years of human civilization. As we wrap up this explainer on the 2018 revelation, it really makes you think. Whether you view this as literal history or deep metaphorical theology, how do these ancient concepts of the soul's unbound power still echo in our modern beliefs? It challenges us to look at how the idea of a liberated, omnipotent soul continues to shape the very foundation of spiritual movements today. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack all this, and I'll catch you next time.